Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a preview. This is for Merchants Cove from Final Frontier Games, a brand new 1 to 4 player game with possible expansions up to 6. You are representing one of many different races in Merchants Cove trying to sell your goods to the market. And to do so, you're going to be using asymmetric powers.
Yeah, these are very asymmetric powers. Most games were able to say this is worker placement or this is action selection. This has got it all. In fact, everyone's player board is drastically different. You're going to effectively be able to achieve some of the same sorts of end results, but how you do it is completely different.
The main board will stay the same no matter which of the asymmetric characters that you choose to be. At the top is going to be the 6 different boats. These boats are going to fill up with one of 5 different types of customers. These customers range from warriors to bards to wizards to nobles, and you even have some rogues. The rogues are basically the nefarious people that you aren't going to be able to sell to and can kind of mess with you through corruption in the game. Each of these boats currently have 4 slots in them. There may be more or less depending upon some of the stretch goals within the game. These boats are actually going to fill up with those customers and then dock into very specific locations in order to purchase the goods that people have made through the course of the round.
Yeah, and players are going to control that because as they fill up with customers or the rogues, once it's filled up, that's when a player, whoever does that, gets to assign it to a dock. Now, these 3 boats over here are going to potentially go to these 2 docks, these 3 to these 2.
And the game is going to be played over 3 rounds. Each of the rounds is broken into 3 different phases. The first, you have the preparation phase, then you have the production phase, and finally you're going to have the market phase. All of that is located on the bottom of the board, and the turn structure is going to take place on the time track. There are 12 spaces on the time track, and each player is going to have one of these markers that's going to denote how much time that you use during your turn. And this works in the same way as kind of like a Glen Moore. If you're further back, you get to take more actions until you catch up with the people that are in front of you. And to take those actions, you're going to be spending time. But the time that you're spending is going to be different depending upon the player that you're using.
Yeah, all of our player boards, like we said, are different. One of those differences is all the different spaces have different amounts of time attached to them. So if I go to one location, it might use just 1 hourglass. I'm going to move 1 space. So if Jeremy takes a big action that moves 2 spaces, I could take maybe 1 to 3 actions that take 1 hourglass and catch up a little bit.
We'll explain more about the main board, but we're going to go right into the characters because this is the meat of the game. This is what you're going to be doing through the course of the game. We've already set it up. There's going to be a preparation phase that's going to set up an X number of townsfolk, an X number of customers in each of the boats. However, when we go into the actual production phase, this is when you're going to be using your worker or workers, depending upon the character that you're using. And what you're going to do is you're going to place your guy, which is a miniature, onto one of the locations on your board that has a time track on it. Everyone's board, as we said, looks very different from one another because the way you take your actions is going to be different. I'm playing the captain, and the captain has an ability to move boats around onto his player board. I have boats, I'm fishing for fish, I'm trying to hunt for hidden treasure in the game, and I'm trying to not get cursed doubloons or treasures within the game. Most of the actions that I use are going to fill up the pirate island with doubloons, and I want to kind of pull those back and gain gold for them, but also not to have them hit a certain threshold. So on my turn, what I'm doing is I'm taking my miniature and I'm moving it to one of the unoccupied worker placement spots on the board. Each of these spots is going to be a little bit different, but we'll talk about them because they all have some commonalities within them. The whole goal is to try to get the goods in order to sell them in the final phase, which is the market phase.
Yeah, a couple of the common spots on everyone's board are these 2 spots right here. I don't know if you can see these on my board, but one of them is going to allow you to acquire some staff from the townsfolk. The other one is going to let you fire off and use all of those staff. The staff are going to go above this board right here. When you acquire staff, you're going to assign them to one of these spots. You're going to be able to take the bonus on that townsfolk card. And then later, if you use the space to use the staff, all of these cards are here going to fire off and do each of these 4 abilities that everyone has on this board.
Each of these staff costs an X amount of time in order to use, depending upon where they are on this row. Each of them is also going to have a possible X number of different symbols on them. These icons could be victory points at the end of the game. They could be corruption, depending upon the number of rogues. They're all basically multipliers for you. Also, the other spots on here are going to allow you to do various actions on your board. As the captain, I'm allowed to move one of my 4 different ships using a spinner. And don't think the spinner is like a kid's toy here. This is actually really cool. This is going to populate Pirates Island with some treasure, but it's also going to allow me to move my boats around into various locations. Why do I want to move my boats around? Because I want to go fishing. Fishing are what I am selling personally as the captain to the market, along with the treasures that I'm able to find around the outside of my board. Both of these actions are right here on my player board, meaning I have to move my boats, fish, place them on the offering table, and then be able to sell those possibly during the market phase.
Yeah, and that offering table and these goods are the thing that's common across all players. Now, the goods are different. I'm actually a blacksmith, so I'm creating swords and helmets to put on my offering table to sell to these customers and doing it in a completely different way. Whereas Jeremy has kind of almost a quasi pick up and deliver thing that is based on movement around his board. I have these colored dice. I'm going to be using these colored dice along with these black dice to forge different things. I can forge red and green weapons, yellow and blue helmets, and put all of those once they're done on my offering table. Now, all of this takes a bit of a process. I can't just do all of that at once. I'm going to assign some dice, then I'm going to go here, I'm going to go into the middle and use my forge to actually create those things and get them out here. One of the things that we're all trying to do, and as we move around this time track, this is the main way it's going to happen, is fill these boats with customers. As those boats fill with customers, that's going to what gets us closer to the end of the round.
So how does it fill up? Every time that you use time in the game, you're moving your marker an X number of time depending upon the time that you use. Anytime you pass any of these markers that show a person, you're going to draw one of the characters from the bag and then put them in a boat of your choice. When a boat fills up, you're going to dock them. When 4 boats have filled up, that's going to signify the end of the round and going into the market phase. But before you do so, all the boats that did not fill up, all of the customers in those boats are going to go to their specific locations on the board. That's because there are ways to score multipliers depending upon who is in the town compared to who is in the boats. Then you're going to go to the market phase, and the market phase is pretty unique. You're going to go from left to right. This boat here is going to interact with this dock, these 2 boats with this dock, and this final boat over here with this dock. And in order, you're going to be selling large goods, small goods, and then either large or small.
Yeah, that last dock gives you some flexibility to sell either large or small. However, it's going to give you some curse along the way. The good news is, though, you want to take note of the customers that are in the boats because these are multipliers for the types of goods you're selling. If this boat here were to happen to have 4 green customers in it and you had some green large goods to sell, you're going to score a lot of points. So this is some of the things that define how you want to put customers in those boats. And the boats that stay out into the water, you're going to want to take that into consideration too, because those staff that you acquire and all the other things that you acquire that have those icons are really going to depend on the end scoring with this multiplier down here.
Once you're done with that phase, you're going to go into the second round. And in the second round, you're going to have a little less time, but possibly some more action spaces that you can go. So you can kind of extend time out through the course of the game. It's all about gold, though. Whoever has the most gold at the end of 3 rounds is going to win. Gold is acquired through any of the things that you sell. So every single one of your treasures, in my case, or my fish, is going to give me gold, which you're going to progress around the outside of the track. You're also going to get gold at the end of each of the market phases for some of the things that you've uncovered on your board. I have various locations that are going to give me victory points if my ships are in those locations, times multipliers of the people in these areas. You score them for the dice that you've removed from your forge.
Yeah, I'm actually able to get extra colored dice on my board and get those points that way. And I'm getting slightly less gold than he would just from a balancing standpoint. And speaking of balancing, there's more than just these 2 characters. There's, I think,
6 total.
6 total characters right now that we know of, and these boards are completely different. Now, we can't tell you all the different details of every single one and how they work, but we'll show you a couple here. I'm going to put this one out for the top-down camera to see. This one is this the Alchemist?
It's the Alchemist.
The Alchemist is making potions, and as you can see on this board, this is completely different than the 2 that we're playing with. You've got this bottle of ingredients here, and you're going to be taking ingredients almost potion explosion style from this and adding them to these cauldrons and then creating different types of potions with these cauldrons. And if you use certain types of ingredients, you might go up this track over here, which leads to some of those curses.
And then you have the Chronomancer and his assistant, which is actually one of the things we talked about previously. There are 2 workers that are going to go onto this board. These are going to fill up with tiles, which are basically time gates. And you're going to be using these across these locations to manipulate these time gates around the board and then go to these locations in order to get the resource that he needs to sell to the market. So again, this is all about asymmetry and using your character to the best benefit possible in order to interact with that market phase at the right time. So that is Merchant's Cove. It's from Final Frontier Games. Very unique game. If you have any questions about it, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.